Folks, welcome to another edition of the National Emergency Coalition conference call. We are waiting for Senator Rand Paul to join us. He should be on any moment. The moment he is on, we're going to go right to him because his time is, as you can imagine, is very short. He's expecting a vote in 10 or 15 minutes. So we're not going to have a whole lot of time with him, but as soon as he comes on, we want to get him before you.
All right, great, Bishop Jackson. This is Rand Paul.
All right, Senator, thank you so much for taking time to join us. We really appreciate that. Senator, out of respect for your time, we know you've got a vote coming up. We're going to go right into it, skip the preliminaries and long introductions. Share with us anything that's on your mind right now, and if you would, if you still got maybe, if you can do that for 5 or 6 minutes, and then maybe we can get a couple of questions in as well. But thanks again for joining us, sir. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. The biggest problem still in Washington is a very fundamental problem. It's a problem that every American family faces, and that's that you have to spend only what comes in. Every American family is required to do that, but in Washington, we're still spending, nearly $1 trillion every year that we don't have. We borrow over $1 million every minute. And the problem is, we try to make amends, we try to cut back on wasteful spending, and sometimes even members of both parties refuse to vote for it. I'll give you one quick example. We tried a few months ago to get rid of $3 million for Twiggy, the water skiing squirrel. Twiggy, the water skiing squirrel, is used to promote the selling of American walnuts in Spain, which I tell people, if you've got a walnut farm, great, but we don't have enough taxpayer money to be spending promoting your product. So we actually spent $3 million on this silly squirrel, and we tried to cut it off, and we had a vote, and unfortunately over half the Republicans and half the Democrats voted to keep this $3 million. And I tell people you can't balance the budget by cutting $3 million, but you know what? If you can't cut $3 million for something ridiculous like Twiggy the water skiing squirrel, I would think that how are we ever going to tackle the big issues that confront us? Social Security is $6 trillion short. Medicare is $35 trillion short. So really, we need people who will make responsible decisions. One of the things I think government should do, though, is take care of our veterans, and I've been very upset with the president's handling of the Veterans Affairs. For years now, it's been known that people are being made to wait in line. Now it turns out that maybe some of the people at the VA were actually falsifying records in order to get bonuses by saying the waiting lines were shorter than they actually were. I'm a physician, and I was trained in 3 different veterans hospitals. Veterans can get good care there, but really I see no excuse for why, if you have to wait in a line more than a certain period of time, we shouldn't let you have a voucher to go to a private facility. One of the other bills that I've introduced in the last week or two is one called Stand With Israel. And this Stand With Israel Pact says that we should not send any money to the Palestinian Authority if they're going to be associated with Hamas. Because Hamas, as you know, has called for the destruction of Israel. It's in their charter. They don't recognize Israel. And they've actually been inciting violent acts against Israel for years now. So ours made it very clear that no money goes to the Palestinian Authority unless Hamas were to recognize Israel and renounce violence. And this is a big deal because it now looks that there are reports being written that the reason Hamas has joined the unity government is that they need a bailout. They're out of money, and they want American money now to flow to Hamas. And I'm going to do everything possible I can to prevent any American money from flowing to Hamas or to any country that does not recognize Israel as a right to exist. With that, I'd be open to some questions. Bishop, if you've got some questions from your audience.
Our Q&A session started.
Folks, in order to ask the Senator a question, press *6, and we will take you in order. Senator, let me open up with this question. I've never seen anything like this administration in terms of lawlessness. And we just found out, for example, in the negotiation for the release of this Afghan American prisoner of war, American prisoner of war in Afghanistan, that the president refused or failed or whatever to notify Congress that he was going to be releasing prisoners from Guantanamo Bay. What can be done about this president's utter refusal to obey the law and to follow the Constitution?
Well, this is a real problem, and despite the exactitude of the law, he takes it into his own hands. Sometimes the law, though, is written poorly, and the law will have some exemptions. So this law, I think, has some exemptions for emergencies, and even though this wasn't an emergency, he just calls it an emergency. It's the same way with aid to Palestinian Authority. He has presidential veto power or waiver power to do whatever he wants. So Congress, a lot of times, they write legislation, but then they write so many waivers into it or leave it so vague that the president can do whatever he wants. And then some of it's the defiance of the president, who just says, by golly, I don't care what Congress has decreed. I've got a pen and a phone, and I'll do what I want. So some have argued we should be able to take him to court, and it's been tried, but the problem is the court a lot of times does not say you have standing for things like suing the president over separation of powers. But we continue to fight. I have him in court over the NSA because I think what he's done with taking Americans' phone records is not legal, and so we're going to try to get the courts to rule on that, but it's very difficult.
Okay, Daniel, let's go to the next caller. And folks, we have been warned that some people might call in and try to harass the senator or harass us on this call. If you start down that road, we're going to mute you and go to the next caller. So we just want respectful calls, if you don't mind. Go right ahead, Daniel.
All right, our first caller is from Los Angeles, California, phone number ending in 3809.
Senator, pleasure to speak with you. Quick question, a Goldilocks question, really. The size of the U.S. Navy, do you feel it's just right? Should be larger, should be smaller?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question to answer exactly as far as numbers of shifts, size of, how many sailors, how many soldiers, things like that. But I think that these are things that we have to address. We've had a large Army and Navy over the last 10 years because we've been fighting 2 active wars. I think most people inevitably think that our Army and our Navy will get some smaller over time. But giving the exact numbers, I think really the better way to do it is to start with saying what we need is the proper amount, which is we need to have a strategic vision for what we need to do to defend America, what we need to do to protect our vital interests around the world. And I think the Navy is an important part of that. I have a nephew who serves in the Navy, and I have a great deal of respect for the Navy. So I would say that I can't give you an exact number, but I would say that instead of starting with a number, what we ought to do is start and say, what do we need to defend America, and then we figure out how to pay for that number.
Okay, next.
All right, the next question is caller phone number ending in 1611.
Yes, thanks for taking my question, Senator. I noticed that President Obama just declared it LGBT Pride Month. And I'm wondering whether you support this, and from a religious and medical perspective, do you believe homosexuality is an illness?
I don't think that there's really a role for federal government in sort of deciding what people's behaviors at home should be one way or another. And so I think really probably it's not something that the federal government needs to be involved in.
Okay, next question.
All right, next question is from caller with phone number ending in 1136.
Oh, hello, Senator Paul.
Hi.
Thank you for coming and speaking with us. My question is regarding the release of 36,000 illegal aliens who already were detained because of criminal activity. What is the response of congressmen to an action like that? I mean, as an American citizen, I'm concerned about that.
I think it's another example of the president sort of taking the law into his own hands. I think that we have to write the laws. The laws need to be specific, and the laws need to say that if you've committed crimes and you're here illegally, that being sent back home or incarcerated are the 2 options. And I think that the president's enforcement of the border security leaves a lot to be lacking. And it really is the step that has to be taken if we are to try to figure out some way of having immigration reform. The first thing you have to have is border security. So I think it illustrates that this president isn't that serious about border security. But that's the first step that has to come, and I think really we don't make any progress until we start with border security.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question.
All right, caller with phone number ending in 8025.
Thank you very much, Bishop Jackson and Senator Paul, for giving us the opportunity. I believe that the both of you share a position regards the value of protecting life. And Senator Paul, you sent a letter some time back talking about legislation or a bill in the Senate that would redefine, for the purposes of the government and the Constitution, the meaning of a person. I would hope you could give us some information on that and where it stands.
Well, one of the most important things that we have to try to figure out as far as protecting life is when life begins, and that's where a lot of the debate is. I personally think that life begins at conception and deserves legal protections. Some courts have ruled this way, and there's sort of a murky bit of legal cases concerning this. You know, a woman who is shot and her baby still in the womb is killed. The murderer can sometimes be charged with double homicide. You can have inheritance rights for children who aren't yet born, but then you can also have children in the third trimester who somehow are still allowed to be aborted. So there really are some confusing and murky aspects to the law, but I think really what we need to have is a discussion as a country trying to figure out and come to an agreement, you know, when life begins. I think that's at conception, but I think it's a healthy debate for a society to have, and I've often said that I really am not sure that a civilization survives long term or long endures that doesn't respect the rights of the unborn, and I'll continue to fight for that.
Senator, thanks so much for the time, and I want to commend you for being willing to reach out and go into venues to speak to Black and Hispanic people, places that Republicans often are not seen. I really appreciate that, and I hope you'll keep that up. I think we can make the case to those folks, and I think we'll find out that they share our values and will come over to our side if we just engage them.
Well, thank you. We're excited. This Saturday we'll actually be opening a new office in the predominantly African-American section of Louisville, and this is our hope, is to take the message, conservative message, Bill of Rights message, individual rights message, to people who once upon a time were largely Republican and really haven't been hearing that message. But we're going to try to take that message to everywhere.
Thank you, Senator. God bless you.
Thank you.